Hey guys, Miss Smith here. I am going to go through the notes for the first day of 3-1. And hopefully in class, if you have any questions over this, if you watch it, you can get those answered by your teacher in class. But this whole section is about writing equations of lines. And you probably remember this a little bit from Algebra 1. But the two main types or forms of a line are slope-intercept form, which you probably remember, y equals mx plus b, or at least that probably rings a bell, and then point-slope form. And honestly, for most of the stuff that we are going to do in this section, this will probably be the easiest formula to use, but we'll see a little bit of both. Okay, so in both of these, m represents the slope, which we talked about last week in terms of simply how to find the slope. And then x1, y1 is just some point on the line, okay? So those are the two common forms of a line. In terms of the uses, they're listed here. So we can just go through it. It says slope-intercept form of a line is used to graph the line. When we have the y-intercept and the slope, this is the easier formula to use. The y-intercept is like a starting point, and then the slope, the rise over run, gives us the direction to another point. Point-slope form is used when we have the slope and then an additional point that's on the line. Once we get it in point-slope form, it's pretty easy to do some simplifying and manipulating to also put it into slope-intercept form if we want. So we're going to look at 3 examples. And your homework will be 3 similar examples to the ones we look at here in class. But the first one talks about this line, f of x equals 3x plus 5. So if I write this out, and I'm going to replace f of x with y for now, 3x plus 5. So that is our equation of the line. Slope is always the number in front of x. So this is your slope. And if we want to, we can write that as rise over run, 3 up 3, and over 1 to the right. So that is the y-intercept of the line, or sorry, the slope of the line. And then if we write this equation again, 3x plus 5, the number or the constant that's by itself when it's in this form, when y is by itself, this is what we call b, or the y-intercept. So once we have these 2 pieces, it's pretty easy for us to actually graph this. The first thing we do is plot the y-intercept, and that's just on the y-axis. So it's y-intercept is the point where the line hits the y-axis. So if our y-intercept is 5 and we go up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we just put a point there. So that's our starting point. That's another way we look at it. And then use the slope as rise over run to get another point on the line. So from this point, from our y-intercept, our slope says to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1. Once we get 2 points, we can then draw our line. Okay. Some of you guys may be thinking, can we also go down 3 and to the left 1? And the answer is yes. Notice that point is also still on the line. So if we're given an equation in slope-intercept form, which is f of x equals 3x plus 5, or in other words, y equals 3x plus 5, the number in front of x is your slope, and then the number by itself is your y-intercept. We plot that y-intercept, and then from that y-intercept point or starting point, we use our slope. The rise is 3, which is why we go up 3, because it's positive 3. The run is positive 1, so we go to the right 1, and that gives us an additional point to graph the line. So that is the first example, which is probably the easiest. The second 2 are going to be a little bit more involved because we are having to come up with the equation of the line. This one says, consider a line whose slope is 5. So we know M is 5 and it passes through a point -2, 8. So remember, when we have some point that is on the line, we call it x1, y1. All right, so we know 3 parts, and it says write the equation of this line in point slope form. So the first thing I'm going to do is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This is point slope form. And if we look at this, we have m, x1, and y1 given to us. So all we're going to do is take these 3 values and substitute them in for the places that they go in this equation. So I have y minus y1, which is 8. The slope is 5, so I substitute 5 in for m. And we have x minus x1, which is -2. And notice here, when we subtract a negative, this really becomes a positive. So we have y minus 8 equals 5 times x plus 2. All right, so this is the simplest when you're given the slope and a point. Using point slope form is the simplest way to get an equation of a line. So this would be in point slope form. If we now want to write the equation of this line in slope intercept form, we start with this. So if we have y minus 8 equals 5 times x plus 2, to get it in slope intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, so basically y being by itself, all we have to do is distribute that 5. So we have y minus 8 equals 5x plus 10. And then to get y by itself, we need to move the -8 over here. So to move it, we undo it. Notice how we line up our things that we're adding on both sides with the like terms. This cancels over here, and we have y equals 5x plus 18. So these 2 equations are the exact same equations. This is in point slope form. This is in y-intercept form. Okay, so you'll see an example like this or a problem like this in your homework as well. The last problem, exercise 3, is probably the most involved problem, because if we notice here, they ask us to come up with an equation of a line, but they only give us 2 points on the line. They don't give us the slope. So notice the first thing we have to do is find the slope of these 2 points on this given line. So this is why we spent last week specifically just practicing finding slope. So if I rewrite these 2 points, I have 4, -3, and -2, 9. So we can follow the formula specifically. So if we call this, so m, remember we subtract the y values on top, and we usually say our second y value minus our first y value. And then on the bottom, we take our second x value, which is -2, and we subtract our first x value. If we simplify this, this ends up being 9. This becomes plus 3, which is 12, and -2 and -4 is -6, which simplifies to -2 over 1, or -2. Okay, so if you like to use the formula, that's fine. I know for my classes, we also talked about connecting the y values on top. So if you look at it this way, and reason we connect them on top is so that we know we put the y values on top. So we can go from left to right, -3 minus 9. And then on the bottom, we connect the x values, and we do 4 minus a -2. You're going to get the same answer. This will also end up reducing to -12 over, this case, +6, but that is also -2. So either or, however it's easiest for you to understand finding slope. If you like to just use the straight up formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, we get to -2. If you prefer to see a visual of connecting your y values on top, So when you go from left to right and subtract them, you know to put them on the top of the fraction. You get -12, and then connecting the x values on the bottom. So you know when you go from left to right and subtract them, you get +6. We get the same answer either way, okay? Once we know the slope, so m is -2, it asks us to write the equation of this line in point slope form. Well, we have the slope, now we need a point. Well, we have 2 points to choose from, so it doesn't matter which one we choose. I usually choose the one that has the smaller numbers in it or the positive numbers. But since each of these has a negative in it, I'm just going to pick for -3. So here's my slope. I'm going to call this x1 and y1. And then remember our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This is point slope form. So now we just replace -2 goes in for m, 4 goes in for x1, and -3 goes in for y1. So y minus a -3 equals -2 times x minus 4. And then we simplify this. So it'll be y plus 3 equals -2 times x minus 4. So that's point slope form. And again, just like we did above, once we had point slope form, we were able to distribute and then add or subtract over this constant to get y by itself. And that gives us slope intercept form. So if we start with this, we have y plus 3 equals -2 times x minus 4. So if we distribute that, we get -2x plus 8. And then subtract 3 on both sides. So we end up with y equals -2x plus 5. And again, these equations are the exact same equations, even though they look different. It's just because they're in different forms. Okay, so in your homework for 3-3 day 1, you'll see kind of one of each of those types of questions. And if you have questions on that or this didn't make sense, hopefully after seeing it a second time in class, that will help. Okay.